Hey students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is suburbanization in the US, and here are your objectives. Please pause the video, look these questions over, and get ready to copy some vocab terms and take some notes. So before I tell you why suburbanization was a big deal, you need to understand the urban geography of the US before suburbanization. Until about 1950, most of the US was rural, with each state having a handful of large cities. This map shows what a typical city might have looked like from space in the early 1900s, before suburbanization. Here you can see a densely populated city with many people living close together. You can see the urban development in gray, and just outside of it is a lot of rural farmland, populated by small villages and towns. And that is all this green and brown land outside of the city. The villages and towns were linked by rail lines and small roads for car and truck traffic. Suburbanization is the movement of people from cities to suburbs, and in the US, it started around 1950 and continues today. In the US and other MDCs, the largest internal migration today is from cities to suburbs. A suburb is a residential area outside of a city. And the key word here is residential. A suburb is a place where people live, but usually not where they work. So unlike cities, suburbs have far more houses than businesses. Also, suburbs exist beyond the city limits and are therefore politically independent of the city they surround. A suburb is not just any residential area that happens to be outside of the city's downtown. It has to be outside the city limits. For example, neighborhoods like Midwood or Sheepshead Bay might feel suburban, but they are not suburbs because they are in the city of New York. Suburbs are politically outside the city, and that's important because a suburb, unlike a neighborhood in a city, has its own government and collects its own taxes. It has its own school system, its own laws, its own courts, and its own elected officials. A suburb is like a separate city, except it's not exactly a city because not many people work in it. It's mostly a lot of houses. I'm going to skip the term ethnoburb now, and I'll come back to it in a moment. Let's look at why suburbanization happened in the 1950s. The first reason was the GI Bill, which was a law passed just at the end of World War II. The GI Bill provided low-interest home loans subsidized by the government for veterans of World War II. And with the baby boom occurring at this time, many veterans had growing families and were eager to move to their own homes in the suburbs. The GI Bill made that possible by providing people with loans so that they could buy a house. Another reason was the Interstate Highway Act, signed into law in 1956. This law authorized $25 billion in government funds for the construction of 24,000 miles of interstate highways across the United States. An interstate highway, also just called an interstate, is a multi-lane highway that has capacity for a lot of traffic. Americans could now live in a suburb and easily commute to work each day by driving on the interstate to get to the city. So the interstate highways allowed people to work in the city but live outside of it. Finally, a new technology called prefabricated housing made it easy for developers to build houses cheaply and in large numbers. Developers bought up farmland outside of cities and converted it into suburban housing developments with hundreds of identical homes. Suburbanization is a major cause of segregation in the United States. Basically, white people left cities to move to the suburbs, but non-white people were unable to. And that meant that suburbs became mostly inhabited by white people, and cities became mostly inhabited by non-white people. Here are some causes of residential segregation, which you already learned about in an earlier unit. First, redlining is a policy by which banks deny home loans to people of color. Restrictive covenants are sections of a housing contract that forbid the owner of the house to sell it to a person of color. and white flight was when white people moved from cities to suburbs. Non-white people, on the other hand, could not move to the suburbs because of redlining and restrictive covenants. One of the first mass-produced suburban developments was Levittown, New York, which is located in Long Island. Built by developer Samuel Levitt after World War II for returning veterans and their new families, Levittown offered attractive alternatives to cramped central city apartments. As they did with most suburban developments, banks excluded communities of color from Levittown by only lending money to whites. Construction in Levittown was modeled on assembly lines, enabling quick and economical production of similar or identical homes. Standard Levittown houses included a white picket fence, green lawns, and modern appliances. Now let's go back to this term ethnoburb. Although suburbs have historically been mostly white, they are becoming more diverse. An ethnoburb is a suburb with a high concentration of a particular ethnicity. It's like an ethnic enclave, but it's in the suburbs. So imagine Chinatown, but instead of being in a city, the Chinatown is its own suburb. And that's the case with San Gabriel, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles and is a Chinese ethnoburb. You can see that in this picture. Edison, New Jersey, which is a suburb of New York, is an ethnoburb with many immigrants from India. All right, now it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know the answer to any of them, just rewind the video and look again. I will see you in class. Bye, students.